My name is Sienna Rhodes, 32 years old, a resident of Portland, the city of year-round rain, where even guilt can hide in the morning fog. I cheated on Julian, my husband, and that cost me every ounce of his trust. Now, he won't even let me touch him. Believe me, I've tried. I've tried everything short of hiring a choir to sing a sappy love ballad outside a theater. And honestly, I might be considering that too. I'm not the victim here. The ones who got hurt are Julian, our two little boys, and my parents. The kind of people who never thought their sweet, good daughter would do something straight out of a reality TV show. Let me be blunt. About 19 months ago, I had an affair. Not with some stranger, but with the 27-year-old neighbor. Let's call him Stephen, for convenience. He had a wife, 3 kids, and a smile that once made me drop the cookie I was eating. The affair lasted just under 5 months, and we only met 4 times to get physical. That may not sound like much, but when you're cheating, every time is like hammering a nail into your marriage's coffin. I hammered in 4. Honestly, even I still can't quite believe myself. I know. People will ask, was your marriage in trouble? Did you still love your husband? Were you unhappy? The answer to all of them is no. I loved Julian. I loved my life. I loved our 2 sons, aged 9 and 11, more than I love end-of-season clearance heels. Julian, my husband, always made me feel loved. In a steady, dependable way, kind of like a 7-seater SUV. Not flashy, but safe and reliable. And then Stephen came along, a shiny sports car speeding by, loud and reckless, reminding me of my very first love at 18. It awakened something wild and primal in me. Back in high school, I dated 4 boys, but none of them were serious. Just a few chaste kisses at the end of movie nights. I saw them more as friends, since we'd all grown up together. Until one day, I got invited to a BBQ. That's where it all probably started. Chris was my friend's cousin, the guy who made my 18-year-old self melt into a puddle during one rainy night, with melting ice cream and dim fairy lights. It was intense, irrational, and completely unsustainable. We chatted at the party, but Chris had to leave for work, so we exchanged numbers. The next evening, a Sunday, we met again for ice cream and a walk. We talked for hours, lost in each other, and then kissed. Chris invited me to his apartment, and that night, I gave him everything. There was something about Chris that made me want to surrender completely. To this day, I can't explain it. It felt like an instinctive reaction I couldn't control. Beyond the physical, Chris and I had nothing in common. In truth, we weren't compatible. We broke up after 11 months. Then I met Julian, the kind of man who could teach you how to change a tire, file your taxes, and love you with deep respect. He checked every box. I knew he was the one. We married a year later, and for 13 years, our life was as calm as a still lake. Until I threw a stone into it, causing waves, then pretending I was just splashing for fun. We have 2 wonderful sons who take after their father in looks and personality. I'm telling you all this to explain how the affair with Stephen began. Stephen and his wife, Scarlett, were the youngest couple in the neighborhood. They moved in not long ago, while I'd already grown used to the barking dog of the widower across the street. At our first neighborhood picnic, Stephen and I held each other's gaze for just a little too long. I didn't mean anything by it. It was just, he looked like Chris. Alarmingly so. The next time we met was at the car dealership where Stephen worked. Julian wanted a new car, and Stephen, in a slightly too tight suit, made sure we got a deal that felt a little too good. That's when the mistakes began. The first time we were alone was at his house. I had accidentally returned to ask about installing mud flaps. Stephen invited me into his office. We made small talk, and then he confessed he liked me. Instead of leaving, I confessed right back. It was a terrible script, and I played the lead and wrote the screenplay. The next morning, after the kids went to school and both our spouses had left for work, Stephen and I had our first physical encounter at his place. For context, my husband has a stable job, and Scarlett, Stephen's wife, is a licensed practical nurse. Stephen and I slept together only 4 times over 5 months. There was no love between us. I loved Julian, and Stephen loved Scarlett. What we had was purely physical, and honestly, it wasn't even good. It didn't come close to what I had with Julian, but because it was forbidden, it felt thrilling and dangerous. Looking back now, 11 years of being a stay-at-home mom had made me crave attention, especially from someone young and magnetic. I thought I could have this secret fling and still keep my loving marriage intact. But no, it fell apart completely. The last time we met privately, we were caught by none other than Clarissa, Stephen's mother-in-law. Not exactly the person you want to see when you're half-dressed. She screamed like thunder in March, slapped Stephen across the face, and punched me hard enough to knock me into clarity. As I scrambled to gather my clothes in panic, she grabbed 2 fistfuls of my hair like I was a rag doll. I went home with swollen eyes, a racing heart, and a scrambled mind. I was utterly shocked by what had happened, and the reality of my actions slowly sank in. I realized my perfect marriage to Julian might be over because of this. I sat in silence for hours, staring at the wall, wondering how to tell my husband. Julian was at work. I left him an urgent message. No response. I texted that I had something serious to say. Still silence. Then Clarissa and Scarlett showed up, screaming outside my door like they were auditioning for a reality TV show. Terrified and humiliated, I didn't answer. Thankfully, my kids were at school when it happened. After they left, I curled up on the couch, feeling like a tragic character from a second-rate romance novel. When Julian came home, I ran to greet him, but he looked at me like I was a complete stranger. He walked straight to Stephen's house. He stayed there for 3 hours, and when he came back, I tried to hug him. He dodged me. I cried, knelt, begged. He said nothing except, "Call your mother. You can't stay here." I ran to hug him, but Julian stepped back, as if I were a flame and he was done getting burned. I opened my mouth to apologize, ready to say the string of words I'd rehearsed in my head all day, but he cut me off, stating plainly that he wouldn't accept it, and that I should leave the house. Our house. Or at least, it used to be. I collapsed onto the floor, tears streaming down my face, unable to maintain even the bare minimum of dignity. I begged, clung to the faintest hope, telling him I didn't want to go. But Julian had turned to stone, not angry, not loud, just resolute. And that was scarier than any rage. Then he called my mother. A short call, but complete. He told her everything I had done, neatly, as if reading out a quarterly report, then asked her to come get me. My mother arrived. She didn't scold me. She just apologized to Julian, then turned to me with the kind of look you give a misbehaving toddler who needs to be picked up from preschool. She helped me pack a few outfits, then took me home. I cried the whole way back, asking Julian what he'd tell the kids. He just said, "I'll handle it." That night, I did something I thought I'd never have to do. I called my own husband and waited like someone expecting to be rejected. Surprisingly, he answered. "Hello?" His voice was as empty as a voicemail box. I introduced myself, as if we were strangers. I apologized, promised I'd never, and said I was willing to spend the rest of my life making things right. He was silent. Then he asked, "Do you have anything else to say?" I said no. I asked how he felt, a question I barely had the courage to hear the answer to. He replied simply, "I know what I feel." Not angry, not heartbroken, just like a door slowly closing, and I was standing there, powerless to stop it. He told me I should stay with my parents for a few weeks. I agreed, because what choice did I have? But I asked if I could see him and the kids. He said not yet, but he agreed to a short call every night at 9 p.m. A tiny light, weak, but I clung to it like it was the sun. The first call ended with me saying, "I love you," and the line going dead. The second was the same, except for one small, gut-wrenching addition. He wanted a divorce. I completely broke down. I begged. I negotiated like a salesperson trying to close the deal of her life. But Julian refused. In fact, he said he was willing to give me everything, assets, house, if I just disappeared and let him and the kids live in peace. I cried like I never had before, repeating that he couldn't be serious. But he was, frighteningly so. After that night, I couldn't sleep. I started calculating, not to win, but to earn one more chance, just one chance. And that's when I thought of a postnuptial agreement, the kind people only know from bad TV dramas and million-dollar divorces. I wanted to write one Julian couldn't refuse. All I needed was one more shot. While Julian met with his lawyer to prepare the divorce papers, I found my own lawyer, not to prepare for divorce, but to draft a postnup I could present to Julian before the divorce papers arrived. I met with 4 different lawyers to convince them to write something they all called extremely unfavorable. Finally, one agreed, maybe out of curiosity, or maybe because he'd been through a similar marriage. A contract was drafted, heavily skewed in Julian's favor, meaning he would receive almost all the benefits just by agreeing to stay married to me a bit longer, to give me one more chance to make things right. Unfortunately, Julian's lawyer finalized the divorce papers in just 11 days. I received them at my parents' house 2 days later. I had the postnup delivered to Julian that same day. That evening, after receiving the contract, Julian called. His voice was different, calm, surprised. And there was something, just a hint, of the old Julian. I could feel the gentle man I once loved again, not the cold, angry person of the past 2 weeks. The agreement, to be fair, was the most generous gift a woman has ever given to a man who wanted to divorce her. All Julian had to do was agree to live with me for another 30 months, and I would give up nearly all rights. If I cheated again, I'd lose everything. No assets, no alimony, no custody. I also had to find full-time employment within 6 months, which sounds easy, but with my face circulating the neighborhood like a warning poster, it was anything but. And the final clause? Julian was allowed to date other people for the remainder of our marriage. I included that not because I thought he would, but because I wanted him to know just how much I loved him. I believed in his integrity, even when he didn't believe in me. What surprised and delighted me was that he agreed. But he added one condition: no physical intimacy, no shared bed, no affection, no love. That clause stated we were under no obligation to sleep together or maintain any sexual relationship for the rest of the marriage. I was hurt and hesitant, but ultimately agreed, hoping that in time I could earn back his respect, trust, and love. But things didn't go as I'd imagined. And that's why I'm writing this. 17.5 months have passed, and our second marriage feels more like a parenting co-op than a real relationship. We're like 2 roommates raising kids, not husband and wife. Don't get me wrong, I'm grateful every day for this second chance. But what we have isn't really a marriage. It's more like two divorced people living together for the kids. Julian doesn't kiss me, doesn't hug me, doesn't look at me like a woman. He avoids me like the flu. Sometimes I try to be affectionate, a quick hug or kiss before he can pull away, but I can tell he doesn't like it, so I don't do it often. He asks me to get monthly STD tests, like a routine checkup, even though we don't touch. Also, since everything happened, Julian has never gone out with me, not even for family events. We don't go on dates. We're not seen as a couple by anyone. At our kids' sports games, Julian stands on the far side of the field with the other dads, pretending I'm just background noise in his life's painting. Vacations? We still take them. Connecting rooms, 2 double beds. The kids in one room, Julian and I in the other, each on our own side. I look forward to these trips. They're the only times I feel like he doesn't hate me. I once suggested moving, starting over, but Julian refused, unless his job required it. As for me, I have no friends left, no reputation, just a tiny backyard garden where I grow things that will never betray me. Since the affair, I've lost all my friendships in the neighborhood. Stephen and Scarlett divorced 8 months after the reveal, but Scarlett and her kids still live down the street. The women I used to be close with cut me off, blaming me for destroying a family. Now our home feels like a prison. I rarely go out, staying inside or tending my garden. The boys often play outside with neighborhood friends, including Stephen and Scarlett's kids, but thankfully, their world hasn't changed too much. Julian still lives in this house with me, but not really with me. He eats dinner late, grills his own meals, hangs out with the neighborhood dads, smokes cigars, and sips bourbon at night, either at our place or theirs. After work, he hits the gym, then comes home. I've gone from being a wife to a shadow that cooks and pays the utility bills. Dinner with the kids is the brightest part of my day. They help me set the table, cook, and talk about school. Those moments keep me from falling apart. This time has brought us closer, taught them valuable skills, even in the garden we now share. To sum it up, some parts of my life are good, others are miserable. I'm not sure if this marriage is worth continuing in its current state, or if I should let Julian go and support him financially. Deep down, I know he's not happy and no longer sees me as his wife or his partner, just a co-parent. I love Julian deeply and will carry the burden of what I've done for the rest of my life. I want to return to the loving relationship we once had, but I doubt he'll ever let that happen. Please tell me what you think I should do. I truly value any advice on how to win back my husband's love and trust after betraying him so blatantly. Last month, I took someone's advice and decided to temporarily leave the house to give the marriage space. I rented a furnished apartment near Mission Bay and have been living there since. I miss my husband, Julian, and the kids, and even my tiny garden. But I feel relieved being away from that neighborhood. When I told Julian about my decision, he seemed surprised and a bit sad. He asked a lot of questions. His reaction showed me that he still loved me. I saw it in his eyes. I still picked up the kids after school. They came to my apartment for dinner and stayed overnight a few times a week. Nathan and I were fairly flexible about it, and the kids were free to move between both homes. The biggest challenge was not seeing Julian as often anymore, and real conversations became rare. So I would often call him, asking small things just to keep the connection alive. Recently, we've had a few longer, deeper conversations, and that gave me hope. I know I still love him. Life really is a roller coaster, Sometimes you're at the top, sometimes you hit rock bottom. And unfortunately, after 2 years back together, Julian decided that it was best for us to divorce. He said he still loved me, and maybe one day we'd find our way back to each other. But he believed it would be easier if we were no longer tied to each other through marriage. He said that as long as we carried the title of husband and wife, he felt like he was trying to forgive me when he hadn't truly been able to. But if we were divorced, maybe he'd have the space to really let go. He suggested we celebrate the divorce once it was finalized, even hinted that we could spend one last night together as a gentle goodbye, free of blame. It sounded strange, but if that was what it took to keep him in my life, as a friend, a soulmate, or maybe more, I agreed. Julian also made it clear that even if we got back together, he wouldn't remarry. He no longer believed in legal bonds, only in true love. I respect that, even though I still wish things had turned out differently. As for the divorce itself, I decided to let him keep 3/4 of our joint assets, even though under the postnup agreement he wasn't obligated to do so. I also didn't ask for alimony or child support. Some might say I was too generous, but I think he deserves it. He's the one who worked hard, and maybe if I hadn't betrayed him, he would have given me everything. I feel at peace with my decision and can live comfortably for at least the next 8 years without needing to work. Still, I'm working anyway, so my finances are stable. If I could offer any advice to women facing temptations like I once did, it would be this: don't do it. That fleeting thrill is not worth the long-term loss of love, trust, and respect. If you feel out of control, seek professional help. In my experience, that moment of escape can never compensate for what you might lose forever. I'm a 32-year-old man, married to Mira. We were in love for 4 years, married for 2, and I truly believed I had found the woman of my life. Everything started going downhill 2 months ago, when Kat suggested we open our marriage. She said it like she was suggesting a new paint color for the living room, light-hearted, without hesitation. But to me, the suggestion felt like a punch to the chest. I never thought Mira would go that far. I don't think of myself as conservative or controlling. But based on what I've been through in past relationships, I couldn't pretend I was okay with this. An open marriage, just the thought of it made me feel like the foundation we'd built was starting to crack. I made it clear I wasn't comfortable with the idea, not because I feared change or lacked flexibility, but because the newness, the adventures she imagined. I'd lived through that before, and I knew the emptiness it left in the end. Mira seemed disappointed. She said I rarely said no to anything she suggested, as if I had betrayed her trust just by sticking to my stance. I love her, truly love her, and most of the time I'm willing to compromise. But not this time. I started wondering if I wasn't attractive to her anymore. Was there something in our intimacy that left her feeling unsatisfied? I wanted to ask, to really understand the root of it, but Mira didn't seem willing to talk. Her schedule was packed. She's a consultant, working with clients in different time zones. Me, I'm busy too, but I maintain a normal routine. Between her shifts and international calls, there was no chance for us to sit down and talk like life partners. I started feeling guilty for reacting too quickly. Maybe I should have asked more, listened more, instead of instinctively rejecting the idea. About 2 weeks later, I came home early one day and cooked her favorite dish. When Kat walked through the door, her smile warmed my heart. I thought it was the perfect time to talk, an honest conversation, no pressure. But when I brought up the open marriage suggestion again, her expression changed. She accused me of playing mind games, thinking I was just pretending to be nice so I could dig deeper into the past. I was stunned. All I wanted was to understand her, to understand the real reason behind the idea. I asked her plainly if I wasn't enough for her. After a few minutes of silence, Kat started talking. She spoke about the young interns at work, recent college grads, living wild lives, partying and loving freely. They inspired her, or rather, made her feel like she was missing out on something. I listened without interrupting. I understood. No one is immune to temptation, but I also shared my point of view. I used to live that kind of life, but after many heartbreaks and broken relationships, I grew tired of that so-called freedom. Meeting Kat brought me peace, for the first time in my life. I didn't want to trade that for a few minutes of thrill. I thought she understood. She didn't push me further or argue. I thought everything was clear, but I was wrong. Just a few days later, Kat seemed like a different person. She became cold, irritable, and even mocked me for being old-fashioned. When I asked, she said I was too stubborn, unable to keep up with the times. I started to doubt. She came home late more and more often, at first a few times a month. Then it became a daily thing. When I asked, she said she was working hard for an important performance review. I didn't want to be suspicious. I tried to trust. But then something happened that I could no longer ignore. About a week later, I began to notice small changes in Kat's behavior. She was distant, easily annoyed, and often used busy as an excuse to avoid deeper conversations. When I asked directly, she simply said I was too conservative, not in touch with modern life. I gave a dry laugh. I wasn't some hermit living off the grid, but I stayed quiet because I was scared that if I kept digging, I'd find something undeniable. Lately, she rarely came home before midnight. When I asked, she said she had to prove herself to get promoted. I respected her ambition, but the anxiety kept growing. That night, I waited for nearly 45 minutes past midnight, but she never showed up. I asked the receptionist, and they told me Mira had left the office a long time ago. My heart sank. I drove home, only to find she still wasn't back. I was overwhelmed with worry, but more than anything, confusion. That night, I made lasagna, her favorite dish, as a small surprise. I texted her to ask when she'd be home, and she replied that she'd be late, after midnight. Instead of waiting anxiously, I decided to pick her up from the office, something I'd never done unless it was planned. The building was still lit. I waited about 40 minutes but didn't see her. The receptionist told me Mira had left in the afternoon. My heart dropped. I drove home, only to find the bedroom empty. Not anger, just a vague sense of fear creeping in. That night, I fell asleep on the couch, anxious and restless. Worried, I went upstairs to ask the receptionist. The office was still bustling with night shift employees, and the receptionist confirmed that Mira had already left. I regretted the idea and drove back, only to find she still wasn't home. I started to worry about her safety. Cheating wasn't the first thing on my mind. I just cared that she was safe. It was too late to contact Mira's co-workers, and since she'd only been with the company for 6 months, I didn't have their info anyway. I didn't know what to do. Exhausted and worried, I dozed off on the couch. When I woke to the first rays of sunlight, I rushed to the bedroom and found Mira sound asleep. I rushed over, gently covered her with a blanket, then returned to the couch to sleep. The next morning, when I asked, she said she left the office at 2:30 a.m., a timeline that didn't match what the receptionist said. I didn't argue, just kept it in mind. But then she called me that afternoon to ask if I had come to the office the previous night. I said yes. She explained that she had actually left earlier to meet a client at a different branch. Her explanation sounded reasonable and could very well be true, but the unease inside me didn't go away. I tried to forget it, but the distance between us kept growing. Our conversations were reduced to logistics: meals, schedules, work. No more spontaneous hugs, no more soft glances. That afternoon, she called again, asking if I had been to the office. I told her the truth. She went quiet for a moment, then said she had left the headquarters to meet with a client at another office in the city. The explanation made sense, but I still felt uneasy. That explained why she wasn't at the office when I arrived. I remained unsettled by her explanation. She added that her client was an Asian company with an office in the US, and that she often joined Zoom calls with their team in Asian time zones. While it sounded plausible and even common, I still felt unsettled by the whole situation. I began to doubt, not because I didn't trust her, but because too many things didn't add up. I was torn between my rational mind telling me to trust and my instincts urging me to find the truth. Then everything crossed a line. I'm not proud to say that I tried to unlock her phone. I didn't find anything. But one night, while she was on a call with her mother, who's recently had kidney problems, I saw her phone screen lit up and unlocked, displaying a notification from a social media app. For the past 2 weeks, Kat had continued coming home late for work. We were basically strangers now, only talking out of necessity. 2 days ago, she was on the phone with her mother, who had been dealing with kidney issues for years, and whose recent blood tests weren't good. She was lying on the bed, talking to her mother, and telling me about her exhausting schedule, her voice tired and pale. I tried to look like I was listening, but the worry inside me kept growing. Partly because she didn't look well, but mostly because my instincts were telling me something wasn't right. As she distractedly talked about medical terms and treatments, I quietly picked up her phone, which had just lit up and wasn't locked yet. When she mentioned a few medical terms, a sudden suspicion flashed through my mind, not about her health, but about her. Something didn't feel right. I stood up, politely excused myself, saying, "I'll talk to your mom more easily from here," walked into the room and straight into the bathroom, locking the door behind me. I turned on the speakerphone, pretending to be on a call, but my eyes were glued to the phone screen where several unread notifications were still visible. A string of messages popped up. Mira had plans to meet someone that day for a fun time. I opened her social media app. Just as I suspected, she was cheating. And not with just one person. There were several, all young co-workers at her company. I didn't have time to analyze every message. Mira had noticed her phone was missing and was now banging on the door. I quickly swiped to the photo library to find proof. And then I saw them. Provocative pictures of my wife in intimate poses with other people. There was no mistaking it. I hurriedly sent the photos to my email and erased the browser history. My heart was pounding so hard I nearly threw up in the bathroom. She kept knocking, calling my name in that familiar, flirtatious tone, the one that now made me sick. I opened the door, shoved the phone back into her hand, and shut the door again without saying a word. At that moment, I wanted to scream, to throw the evidence in her face, but I held back. I was furious, but I needed clarity. In the chat notifications, there was a specific time and location for her meeting that afternoon. I left the bathroom pretending nothing had happened, grabbed my car keys. She called out softly, "Babe?" But I didn't look back. I arrived at the hotel 2 hours before the meeting time, chose a hidden corner in the lobby, and ordered a drink. One glass, then another. By 5 p.m., a part of me still hoped she wouldn't show. Maybe I wasn't ready to face the truth. But by 6 p.m., with still no sign of her, I began to suspect. Had she sensed something? At 6 p.m., I started to think maybe she felt my presence and changed the location. Still, I was too drunk and exhausted to think clearly. I stayed seated, drinking. Then around 7 p.m., I saw Mira. She actually showed up. In that moment, everything inside me collapsed. The world bent and blurred after 4 hours of alcohol. What happened next was a blur, like a dream. I stood up, staggered toward her at the front desk, tapped her shoulder gently and whispered, "Enjoy your little adventure." Maybe I said more. I can't remember. She grabbed my hand, eyes wide with horror and panic. I only remember pulling my hand away, leaving her stunned, and walking out like a ghost. I took a cab to Lincoln's place, my best friend. I collapsed on his doorstep. When I woke up the next afternoon, I was on his couch. He handed me a plate of eggs and a glass of lemonade. I told him everything, didn't hold anything back. He was the first to say what I hadn't been sober enough to consider. You need to protect yourself first. Freeze the joint accounts, change all your passwords, and get tested, especially for STDs. I followed his advice, not out of spite or greed, but because I couldn't trust her for another second. When my phone recharged, it exploded with notifications, over 100 missed calls, 50 voicemails, and a flood of begging messages. I silently blocked them all. I no longer needed to hear a single word from her. I didn't need an explanation. I took a few days off from work, drank heavily, and just wanted to disappear. I didn't know how to face anything anymore. I truly didn't know what to do next. My friends started looking for the best divorce attorneys in the area. I was advised to secure the joint accounts, change passwords on sensitive information, and get tested for STDs. Fortunately, the test results were negative. Lincoln helped me find a lawyer, and I shared all of Mira's photos from her phone with him. For the time being, I moved in with Lincoln until the divorce was finalized. It worked out well, as he needed a roommate. During all this, Mira kept trying to reach me, even showing up at Lincoln's place. She cried, saying it was all just about exploring desire, that the encounters meant nothing. I didn't have the emotional energy to figure out if she was being honest. Gen Z might call it self-discovery, but all I saw was blatant betrayal. A few days after that update, I asked Lincoln to bring the keys and collect my things from the house, hoping Mira had gone to work like usual. But Lincoln told me she was there. She had quit her job. She said the interns made her feel wanted and beautiful again, and she got sucked into the thrill they offered. They used her, emotionally and financially. By the time she realized it, it was too late. Mira told Lincoln that everything started when interns at work began flirting with her. They made her feel attractive and desired again, which led her to try different experiences, even unethical ones. It started as a one-time thing, but she got addicted to the adrenaline rush. Because the interns had little money, they relied on Mira to cover expenses. Eventually, she realized she was being financially exploited, but by then she was deep into that lifestyle. When Lincoln asked why she didn't confess earlier, Mira said she had suggested an open marriage to me as a way to ease her guilt. But how genuine can that be? Proposing an open marriage after cheating. She even demanded alimony for emotional distress. But if anyone deserved compensation, it was me. Mira is now resisting signing the divorce papers and blaming me for provoking her into cheating. Yet she hasn't provided any evidence for her outrageous claims. She's now asking for financial support due to mental trauma from the divorce. But if anyone deserves compensation, it's me, the one who had to endure that gut-wrenching betrayal. At the end of the month, her sister Amelie contacted me. She begged me to give Mira a chance at reconciliation, saying she was suffering from depression after losing her job and having her private photos spread around the office. Those same colleagues leaked intimate pictures of her with them to upper management, who mocked her as easy. The rumors spread through the company, forcing her to resign. Later, even senior staff shared those rumors outside the company's network, making it nearly impossible for her to get a reference. But I reminded Amelie, Mira chose the thrill over a stable marriage. Now she has to live with the consequences. As for me, I'm moving forward. I've cut back on drinking, focused on getting healthy, eating well, and keeping busy with work. The divorce proceedings are ongoing despite Mira's resistance. It's taking a bit longer than expected, but my lawyer assures me it will all be over soon.